What's up guys, and welcome to the 2024 Lexus RX 450h Plus. What a mouthful, but I've been driving this plug-in SUV for the last week and I want to talk to you about my impressions, some of the things I like and dislike. Now I know this is very off-brand for me. I don't typically review non-performance or enthusiast focused vehicles, but believe it or not, I was actually very interested in reviewing this, because I've never driven an RX of any generation, and the latest generation, since now there are multiple hybrid models available, including the 350, this 450, and the 500, all with varying levels of horsepower from their hybrid powertrains. This vehicle has been very interesting to me as a potential daily driver. Now, don't worry, those of you who have been following my channel for a while know that I've been daily driving enthusiast vehicles ever since I bought my first car. That's not about to change. I'm still going to be dailying my Integra Type S for the foreseeable future, but my fiance currently drives a 2017 Honda Accord EX, and while she's not getting rid of it anytime soon, she has been especially interested in the more fuel-efficient luxury SUVs, and the Lexus RX has always been something that she's been very interested in because it's comfortable, luxurious, efficient, and of course it has that Lexus reliability. So this 450h Plus is actually the perfect model to test. Because it is the plug-in hybrid, we were able to drive it around for about 20 to 25 miles in pure EV mode. Now it's actually rated for 37 miles, but when I received the vehicle it wasn't fully charged, so I wasn't able to test the EV range, but other independent tests have found that you're able to get anywhere from 30 to 40 miles if you drive conservatively. This vehicle is powered by a 2.5 liter Atkinson cycle inline 4-cylinder engine. It's naturally aspirated, makes only about 180 horsepower, but with front and rear electric motors and an 18.1 kilowatt hour battery, this has a combined power output of 304 horsepower. Curb weight is somewhere between 4,800 and 4,900 pounds, so this is quite heavy. It's a two-row SUV. Obviously, it's not particularly big. It's smaller than something like a BMW X5, but for someone like me and my fiance, this has plenty of cargo space and passenger space as well. MSRP of this particular car as spec'd is over $75,000. I believe a base 450h Plus starts at right around $70,000 with the luxury trim. This one also has a few upgrades like the Mark Levinson sound system, the convenience package, which gives us things like the traffic jam assist and the panoramic camera, as you can see here. Oh, I guess it won't let me see it when I'm driving at freeway speeds, but I can say that I would not want any lower of a spec than this. I appreciate the Mark Levinson sound, it sounds great, and I am now a sucker for modern driving assists. Traffic jam assists in particular works very, very well. I drove from the East Bay here in the Bay Area to San Francisco and back last week, and I really appreciated the fact that I barely had to do anything while in traffic. The car would automatically brake, come to a complete stop based on the car in front, and when the car in front starts moving again, this would slowly creep forward. I will say though, some of the other driving aids, while they do work very well most of the time, it's a little bit touchy at times. Some of the parking sensors, for example, tend to get triggered very, very easily, and the car just beeps at you incessantly, even though you are well within what you'd consider a safe distance from your surroundings. That small quibble aside though, I've really, really enjoyed driving this RX 450h Plus over the last week. Love this 14-inch infotainment display, which is much bigger than the 9 or 10-inch display you get in a base RX. You get a combination of touch-sensitive and analog controls. Thankfully, we still have physical dials for the temperature, but unfortunately, the fan speed is now on the touchscreen. It's not too bad, it's still pretty easy to adjust, but I've always maintained that all AC controls, including fan speed, your recirculation, AC on and off, your temperature, they should always be physical controls. It's just so much easier to not have to take my eyes off the road and just be able to feel exactly what I'm doing. This has a CVT transmission, although it does come with paddle shifters, so you can shift it and it feels quite natural even though it's synthetic shifting. We have a digital dash, which is very intuitive. It gives me all the information I want. You can see there on the left side we have our battery state of charge. Right now we're looking at maybe 20-25%, so it won't actually let me go into full EV mode using this button down here. As you can see, EV mode unavailable, battery low. But even in hybrid mode, this vehicle is rated at in the mid 30s for miles per gallon. So still a very, very efficient vehicle for weighing almost 5,000 pounds. And with 304 horsepower, this actually has good acceleration. Watch this, I'm at 62 miles an hour. And there we are at 75 in just a couple of seconds. Just enough power, in my opinion, for an RX. I would probably not want a base RX with just over 200 horsepower. I mean, it's probably fine for most people, but I enjoy a little bit of extra pep. One thing about the controls that I don't like, in addition to some of the climate controls being on the touchscreen, are these touch-sensitive pads on the steering wheel. Now, if you recall, some of the last generation Lexus products had that horrible touchpad that was just so unintuitive and annoying to use. Thankfully, they got rid of that, but they still left some remnants of that technology in this vehicle. So if you can see the head-up display right now, if I hold my finger on these 4 arrows, it will allow me to select between these 4 different things, right? So my following distance for my adaptive cruise control, my driving assist mode, we can change between adaptive cruise and regular cruise if you press the actual button. It's just not that intuitive. I've gotten somewhat used to it over the last week, but still I'd rather just have regular physical buttons on the steering wheel. I do not like having touch sensitive controls at all on the steering wheel. It just becomes a little bit too easy to mispress something, given that the steering wheel is something that you change hand positions on often, and it's actually something that moves. It's easy to accidentally brush something that is touch sensitive. But like I was saying earlier, the actual driving aids themselves, let me turn on adaptive cruise here, maximum speed to, let's say 72 miles per hour, and my follow distance is 2 out of 4, and then I'll make sure that my lane keep assist is also on, or they call it lane tracing assist, and I'll just barely rest my hands on the steering wheel. It'll automatically keep me within the lane, and it does a pretty good job at keeping that distance between me and the next vehicle in front. Driving dynamics wise, this is what you'd expect of a Lexus RX. Very softly tuned suspension, very light and numb steering, virtually no steering feedback, but you know what? That's okay. You don't need steering feedback in a nearly 5,000 pound luxury SUV. Or at least that's my personal opinion. I don't need to feel every bump on the road. That is a lot of turkeys chilling at this intersection. This does not have rear axle steering, but the turning radius is actually quite good, very easy to maneuver. The suspension compliance is really excellent, very comfortable over the bumps, very quiet as well. NVH levels are low. This all-wheel drive system is nothing too sophisticated. It is not a rear biased architecture. The rear axle is only powered by the electric motor. When you are driving this vehicle, you are not pushing it to the limit to the point where you would feel that. So at least you have the extra assurance of all-wheel drive, knowing you can drive this in basically any weather condition. And because the combustion engine is not powering both axles, it doesn't suck away at that efficiency. Now, the 18.1 kilowatt hour battery does not have DC fast charging, so it will probably take you overnight to charge this thing fully. But if you're someone who's lucky enough to have free charging at work, like a lot of tech companies offer here in the Bay Area, something like this makes a lot of sense. With 37 miles of EV range, that might actually be enough to never have to use the gas engine when you're commuting. All right, let's figure out where the heck we are. Never been to this part of town, but yes, very, very easy car to drive. The controls, although numb, are very natural. The steering weighting is nice and light, and it's not overly quick or overly slow. It just feels natural. The throttle response is great. The brake response is what you'd expect. Acceleration-wise, plenty of acceleration. I think 0 to 60 is rated at under 6 seconds or just around there. It's no B58 BMW X5 beater, but that's also not why you'd buy something like this. But I bring up the X5 for a good reason, because you can buy a fairly well-spec'd brand new X5 for around the same money as this particular RX. $75,000, you can get a 6-cylinder X5 with a few options. And that is the superior driving SUV. The driving dynamics of that vehicle are actually really, really good. I would say class leading in that price point. I reviewed a B58 powered pre-facelift X5. I think it was a 2019 model year, in the canyons, and I was actually really blown away by the way that vehicle handled. Obviously B58 engine, ZF 8-speed automatic transmission, a killer engine and transmission combination, and an excellent chassis with great tuning of the suspension with adaptive dampers. This RX 450h Plus has passive dampers, so you can't adjust it. Perfectly fine, by the way, for daily driving, nice and soft and plush. But if you do want to drive it in a more sporting fashion, which I'm not sure why you would, won't feel nearly as capable or competent as the X5. The X5 is also a bit bigger, so more cargo capacity. But again, you're giving up so much of that efficiency with the X5. So I'm not really sure if most people would cross-shop a plug-in hybrid RX against an X5, but I actually am one of those people if I were looking for a daily driver luxury SUV, because as much as I love the efficiency of this RX and the on-paper reliability, the BMW speaks to me more from a driving enthusiast perspective. I also happen to prefer how the X5 looks, although the RX looks great as well, especially with this luxury trim. It comes with the 21-inch multi-spoke wheels, which I think look fantastic. But at the end of the day, if you are someone whose sensibilities prevail when shopping for a luxury SUV, the RX 450h Plus is hard to beat. Actually, I would argue that the most enticing alternative is to not go for the 450h Plus plug-in hybrid and get the RX 350. You can still spec it out with the nice interior and the bigger infotainment display. But if you're someone who is curious about the EV driving experience but don't want to fully commit, and I admittedly do fall into that bucket right now, I've driven plenty of EVs, but I personally still would not purchase my own, just because I like the flexibility of not having to plug in my car every single time I need to plan a longer trip. But if you still want the convenience of being able to commute reasonable distances without using any gas, this gives you that option. I drive so many raw performance cars nowadays that I really appreciate just being able to sit back, turn on the ventilated seats. The rears are ventilated as well, by the way, and just chill. Maybe I'm just getting old, but this is something I can definitely get used to. So let me know what you think about the Lexus RX, specifically the RX 450h Plus. Is it worth the $70,000 to call it $80,000 MSRP, or are you better off getting one of the lower trim RX models? There's also an RX 500h that sits above this in terms of performance. Not really sure why you would get that, to be honest, but I'll reserve judgment until I've driven one. Let me know if there's other SUVs that are worth considering, especially something that has this level of efficiency and comfort and reliability all in the same package. A big shout out to Lexus for providing this RX for review. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.